Hello and welcome to the Infrastructure Automation Using Chef on Azure webinar. My name is Matt Ray. I'm the Manager and Solutions Architect for Chef in APAC. Today we're going to learn how Chef can bring automation and DevOps to accelerate your customers' migration to Azure. So let's get into it. Just a few quick highlights of Chef, the company, and their project. We are based in Seattle with offices in London, San Francisco, and Atlanta. We're expanding into Australia. I'm moving to Sydney next month and we'll be hiring in the region. We have a huge open source footprint and a very strong presence in the Fortune 500. We are venture backed and we have partnerships with Microsoft, AWS, HP, and many other companies. Chef is a leader in the DevOps market. We were born in the DevOps movement. We've learned a lot by helping the big web players move forward. Helping the likes of Facebook, Etsy, Yahoo build their infrastructures to massive scales and move quickly. We understand the DevOps patterns and how to translate them into the enterprise, how to safely move faster and make users happy. Some of this is software, some of this is culture, and a lot of it is how people work together. We've distilled these patterns into the Chef platform. So what is Chef? Chef gives you the ways to make your infrastructure and applications behave the same. The lessons we've learned from software development. Saving time and reducing the errors by automating provisioning and configuration at scale. By continuously delivering the applications and your infrastructure with a proven pipeline. Common tooling, testing, continuous delivery. These are the lessons we've learned from software development. The enterprise has its own standards and regulatory regimes that they have to meet. If you're treating your infrastructure as code, how can you treat your compliance as code? We're going to help you build your applications and infrastructure continuously with testing and compliance built in. And that's what Chef helps companies do. So here's a nice quote from Jeffrey Snover, technical fellow and lead architect for Windows Server at Microsoft. What's important here is we're really proud of our partnership with Microsoft. We've worked closely with the technical leadership team on the Windows Server and their dev tools and the Azure teams to make Chef the best DevOps platform on the planet for Microsoft's customers. Windows has been a first-class citizen across everything we do, and the folks at Microsoft have taken notice. What is the overall goal? We want to help you move quickly, safely. We want to help companies move as fast as they can to meet their customers' needs. We want to describe infrastructure and workflow as code. We want to provision and manage infrastructure and applications anywhere. We want to test, package, and deploy applications anywhere. And we want to check for compliance with a continuous audit. We see three main components for this: cloud, automation, and culture. By now, I shouldn't have to tell you the benefits of cloud. If you want to move quickly, you need fast, dynamic infrastructure. You don't want to wait months, weeks, or even days to get access to the infrastructure you need, whether it's in production or in testing. Deploying to Azure gives you the infrastructure agility, whether it's public or private cloud, if you're using Azure Stack. At the speed of today's infrastructures, automation is the only way to scale. Once you start moving to automation, you start standardizing how you work, which has benefits. You get the versions of the infrastructure so you know what's running where. You get repeatable workflows. You can test things before they get to production and reason on them at scale. Because you know how they got deployed and configured, there are no accidents because someone has mistyped something somewhere. Chef helps manage these dependencies across your nodes and helps you scale your policies. So how do we collaborate when we move quickly? We want to help knock down the barriers between teams so they can solve their problems faster. By integrating application and infrastructure development teams into cohesive projects, we lose the handoff and blame that goes with silos. Security and compliance can be also integrated. They're not an afterthought that becomes a roadblock later on. And when things break, when they break quickly, they can be fixed quickly. A culture of working together toward constant improvement brings higher velocity and increased satisfaction. Releasing code is fun. Everybody wants to get their code into production. So what are the rewards of this? Dr. Nicole Forsgren does a study each year, the state of DevOps adoption, on companies that have adopted DevOps. What we found is they get more profit, they get more market share, and more productivity. The companies that you identify in the lead, they're doing these things. They're the software-defined businesses. They are the market leaders. DevOps is good for business. So how do we do this together? Chef provides a toolkit and a workflow that matches what we've seen working in the enterprise and the fast-moving early adopters. We want to codify all the best practices to give a consistent collaborative workflow. Chef Delivery is an opinionated workflow for how you test, build, and deploy software. All the stakeholders, your developers, operators, and others, they need a collaborative workflow. Applications, runtimes, and infrastructure must be deployed together. We start at the left. Chef Compliance is how we validate and test infrastructure for auditors' requirements. The Chef DK is how we model, build, and test our infrastructure before getting it ready for production. The Chef Client and Server manage that infrastructure. Our new Habitat project manages building, configuring, and deploying applications. And the Chef Delivery provides the standardized workflow with multiple dependent pipelines and approvals for deploying from code to production, no matter where it may be running. So let's look at the Chef integrations to the Microsoft ecosystem. There's Chef in Azure, our hybrid management across clouds, Chef in the Windows Server, and the Chef development tools for Windows. Test-driven infrastructure enables teams to move faster. The same goodness from test-driven development carries over to test-driven infrastructure. It enables small changes with associated documentation. It provides a quality bar for all infrastructure and allows you to respond to changes quickly and cheaply. But wait, there's more. Any gap between what's on a programmer's desk and production is a risk. And so TDI, test-driven infrastructure, lets developers replicate production environments with confidence. With Chef, we do this with the Chef Developer Kit. It's test-driven infrastructure in a box. We check for code correctness with Rubocop and Food Critic. We test our code with unit tests with Chef Spec. And then we can deploy those cookbooks that describe how applications and infrastructure are deployed. We can deploy that into sample environments using Test Kitchen and Chef Provisioning that allow us to create ephemeral instances to test that our code actually works on real live virtual machines. And then the Chef Development Kit is the wrapper that holds it all together. The Chef Developer Kit provides full support for Windows and Linux environments. The Chef Developer Kit is available for Windows as well as Linux and OS X. It's the full developer experience. It has a Knife Windows plugin that supports bootstrapping Windows servers and remote command execution. We can do this with WinRM or SSH. We can also manage Linux instances from the Chef DK. It provides a Test Kitchen driver supporting Windows Guest and Azure RM, which allows your Chef code to be tested against Windows and Linux machines on Azure. We make it easy to use Chef with Azure. We provide tooling across several different fronts. We've got the Knife Azure plugin, which allows you to create VM instances managed with or without a Chef server, allows you to deploy applications through the Classic and ARM APIs. You can enumerate your instances in the images as well as delete them from Azure and Chef server. The Kitchen Azure plugin will allow you to provision Azure resources for on-demand testing, allowing you to test with real VMs to see if applications behave as you expect them to before pushing them to production. And the Chef provisioning library allows you to programmatically deploy infrastructure on Azure. I'd like to point out that there's a brand new book from a friend of Chef, Stuart Preston, called Using Chef with Microsoft Azure. You might want to check that out. Chef makes it easy to migrate and automate workloads. Whether you're moving from a traditional data center of Linux, Windows, and VMware into a modern data center, upgrading to Windows 2012, virtualizing with Hyper-V or PowerShell DSC deployments. We make it easy to automate and control all your Windows and Linux servers with Chef. We support DSC natively, and we're already on board with Microsoft's latest Nano project. So we're very close with Microsoft's development. But we also want to make it easy to migrate those workloads to Azure. As you're starting to move from your data centers into the cloud, we want to help you automate and control those Windows and Linux instances. So Chef works with the Chef server. The Chef server stores that policy and configuration data for all of your infrastructure. The client checks in with the server. The client is running on each node, and it tells the server the current state of that machine and works to reconcile any policy differences on the machine with what has been instructed. Chef clients notify the server of their states, and they can also check on the state of other nodes. So if you have, say, a database that's moved, changed IP addresses, or changed which port it's listening on, the nodes that require that database can update their configurations to match it, whether it's running in a data center or in Azure. So on the Azure Marketplace, we've got the Chef server. This is a fully supported option from Chef. It allows you to automate your infrastructure no matter the scale and complexity, and gives you a deep understanding of what's running on that infrastructure through the reporting and analytics plugins. The image is pre-configured with the Chef server and the analytics management console and reporting. You can choose different sizes based on the size of your deployment, including a bring your own license option if you're already a Chef customer. And this allows you a chance to move from open source Chef to Chef's premium offerings with no friction, as well as making it easy to scale your Chef consumption no matter the size of your infrastructure. So Chef compliance allows you to check the state of infrastructure, whether it's Linux, Windows, Solaris, AIX, it doesn't matter. This is an example of what compliance looks like, where you define a control, whether we're checking for NTLM v2 authentication, and with a description of what we're looking for. And then we can see here it's checking a registry key. So what compliance does is it takes these rules and runs them against machines to see the state they're in. We have importers for SCAP and sys benchmarks. So if you already have a lot of controls written in other formats, we can import those as well. And then we provide a dashboard to show you how this looks, to check the state of your infrastructure. What compliance does is it actually connects to machines, SSH for Linux, WinRM for Windows, can connect to a Docker host to check on Docker containers, and scans those machines for what you've established as your benchmarks. And this all goes into centralized reporting, and so you can export a live cleaned up data stream into something like Splunk or run arbitrary reports against it. You can do things like check for PCI compliance. It comes with sys benchmarks out of the box, as well as a couple of other settings, or bring your own. So a lot of SIs are starting to work on that. And so to this end, we've got a Chef compliance image on Azure as well. It provides the dashboard and the scanner with pre-built profiles built in. It has the sys benchmarks included. It's also fully supported by Chef, and you can scale it based on the size of your deployment. And use this to automate your audit compliance. So audit with Chef compliance, see what the state of your infrastructure is, and then you update it with the Chef client and server to match what you want to see. So if you find something like incorrect ports are open, you scan for that with compliance, fix it with Chef, never leave compliance again once you've automated that. And compliance supports not just operating systems, not just Linux and Windows, but also HPUX, AIX, Solaris, as well as scanning applications. Things like Oracle databases, MySQL, SQL Server, IIS, Tomcat. A lot of compliance profiles are built in, and it's built based on the open source NSPEC project. So a lot more coverage is being added all the time. So let's talk about a couple of examples of customers succeeding with Chef. Intuit's a great story of culture change being successful with the right tools. Intuit is migrating from physical primary Linux infrastructure into the cloud, and it's a great use case if you are seeing cultural change, if you have customers that need configuration management, or they need to move to scale. A customer like Intuit is a good example because they were able to reduce their internet banking deployment process a timeline from 6 months to 18 minutes. That's how long it used to take them to deploy. They have achieved full security and release compliance in parallel to these time to deploy improvements. And they've been able to scale from hundreds to 5,000 plus servers with all this built on a repository of over 1,000 shared recipes that standardize how they deploy their infrastructure. They've gone from 30 silos within the company down to one sharing community of users and operators. Another great story is application deployment. Traditional enterprises like Scholastic and Gannett were able to decrease their application deployment speeds from 5 weeks to a day, from minutes to minutes from weeks. Even shops like MSN have seen a 50% acceleration in application deployment. Moving fast means you can respond to what your customers need faster. That's another strong use case for Chef. And DevOps transformation. If you have companies that know they need to compete, they know that they need to modernize because their competition is doing that, well, we have lots of great examples of that. Standard Bank is one of the world's largest banks. They needed to significantly reduce their tool investments while improving security. The bank consolidated their infrastructure management to a single platform, Chef, and they were able to do things like remediate issues related to shell shock across thousands of servers in a single hour, a process that used to take them weeks across the servers that weren't managed with Chef. They eliminated over $2 million in security and network management software, and the bank projects over $10 million in total savings related to consolidating their infrastructure management onto Chef. If you have customers that match this use case, let's talk. And Standard Bank has fully adopted infrastructure as code. They're using a shared repository of cookbooks for their infrastructure management. They've been able to execute test-driven approach to configuration management and resource deployment. They've built compliance into their workflow, and they can achieve compliance at velocity. So these are just some of the examples of what Chef provides to the customers. But when you have a customer that says, how do we keep up? They need to move faster. Let's talk about them. If you have customers that need infrastructure automation, they need to know how they can scale things. If they have Linux and Windows together, if they need to manage their cloud adoption, they need to help migrate workloads into Azure. If they need to standardize and get to modern operating systems and application stacks from a lot of existing infrastructure. If they have compliance challenges, how do they move quickly and stay compliant at the same time? Or even if you just hear the buzzword Chef in those accounts, or they're already using Chef, please come and talk to us. We are a top marketplace, a top Azure marketplace partner, and we want to help you achieve those wins locally with your customer base by leveraging Azure Marketplace on the front end and driving more Azure consumption on the back end. We've had a lot of success with working with Microsoft, and we'd like to help you succeed as well. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our presentation today. If you have any questions, please let us know. Thanks.